good form to turn.
Okay. Order. I will call Peter Swallow to move the motion, and I will then call the Minister to respond. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. Order. Order. Peter Swallow to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Jardine, and it's an honour to serve under your chairship. I move that this House has considered the role of the cadets. On Remembrance Sunday, I stood alongside other Bracknell residents at our war memorial in the town centre and reflected on the service of our armed forces and the sacrifices they have made to protect us, including, of course, the ultimate sacrifice. It was an honour to stand there as Bracknell's MP in my first year in the role. The ceremony concluded and we processed to the church for a service of remembrance. There were proud veterans marching with us and proud military families, and a very large number of young people from Bracknell's local cadet forces all turned out in their uniforms on a Sunday morning to take part and honour our armed forces. I know the picture was the same in services up and down the country. Please.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine, and I'm really grateful to the Honourable Member, A, for bringing this debate forward and allowing me to make an intervention. But I just wanted to intervene very briefly at this point about the representation that our cadet forces make in our local communities, because I too see that week in, week out, but also particularly on Remembrance Day. And I think of Squadron 1444 Brownhills, Squadron 425 Aldridge. Don't worry, there are as many of them, but I'll just mention a few, but also TS Vigo in Walsall Wood. And as a Member of Parliament, when I see them, they make me incredibly proud. And I hope that we can continue to support those groups up and down the country. And importantly, all those people that work behind the scenes, the volunteers, the families who support them in the work that they do to serve our communities.
I thank the Honourable Member for that intervention, and I think the points you make are, many of those I will go on to touch upon, but I think it really does show that the commitment to our cadets and the volunteers that support them really is felt across the House. Please.
I thank my honourable friend, the member for Bracknell, for having secured today's debate on cadet forces, because in Slough we have the Sea Cadets, Air Cadets and Army Cadets, who provide a fantastic development and learning opportunity for young people, as well as, of course, playing an invaluable part in community and events and services. But as my honourable friend agree that we need to ensure that the cadet expansion programme is sufficiently funded so that more young people can benefit from these amazing opportunities that being a cadet provides.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and he speaks with great weight on this topic as the chair of the Defence Select Committee, and I think it's very important that in that role he recognises not only the huge contribution of our armed forces but also the contribution of the cadets. So I really do welcome him taking part in this debate. On the cadet expansion scheme, I'm going to come on to that later in my speech, but I will just say at this point that I think it's really important that we think about expanding all cadets, not just CCFs, although that is important, but all cadet forces. And of course, the cadet expansion scheme is very much targeted at CCFs. So I'd like to see it well funded, but also sort of looking at across the 5 cadet forces. But if I may return... oh, please do, yes.
First of all, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for bringing this forward? And cadet forces have featured very, very much in my life in Northern Ireland. I declare an interest as a former soldier for the Ulster Defence Regiment and also for the Royal Artillery for some 13 and a half years. Across Northern Ireland, some 200 cadets and 50 adult volunteers from across Northern Ireland, representing both the 1st and 2nd Army Cadet Force battalions, marched proudly through the streets of Ballyclare town in Northern Ireland when they were first established back in October of last year. In Northern Ireland, what the cadets do, and it's a really, really important issue, they bring both communities together, the Protestants and the Roman Catholics, the Nationalists and the Unionists, to serve in uniform in the cadets. And that far-reaching goal which they achieve is one that in Northern Ireland we're very aware of, because the British Army whether it be the Air Force, the Royal Navy, whatever. Everyone should be able to serve in that there without any fear of attack from anyone. So the cadet forces play their part in Northern Ireland, and does he, like I do, welcome very much their creation again, or the reorganisation again, and support him and what he's trying to achieve in this debate today.
I really welcome that intervention from the honourable member. It demonstrates the role that the cadets play in every corner of the United Kingdom, and just how important it is that opportunities for young people are shared across our regions and nations. So if I may return to the Remembrance Sunday in Bracknell, which I was very proud to attend, I saw there young people giving up their Sunday mornings, waking up far earlier than any teenager wants to on a weekend, to do something important, to remember. In October, I had the opportunity to visit Bracknell Army Cadets alongside my honourable friend, the Minister for Veterans and People, and Bracknell Forest Council's Armed Forces Champion, Councillor Georgia Pickering. I hope the Minister won't mind me saying that he was able to offer deep inspiration to the young people he spoke to, sharing his own personal stories of service, bravery and sacrifice in the armed forces. But I also hope he won't mind me saying that I believe the cadets in turn inspired him with their stories, their drive and their thoughtful questions. In November, I was also privileged to visit Brackenhouse School and meet their combined cadet force contingent. It was a real pleasure to see how staff, students and volunteers are rightly passionate about the impact CCF has on creating a sense of belonging and teamwork among students, as well as supporting their well-being. There's an assumption that only private schools have CCFs. Brackenhouse, however, is a state school. And in Berkshire, to challenge another stereotype, almost half of our cadets are female. It's crucial that the benefits of participation in the cadet forces are open to all. As of April last year, there were almost 150,000 young people involved in the cadets across the country, with 90,000 of these in the Army, Air, Sea or volunteer cadets, and 50,000 in the CCF. In the South East, our cadet forces are supported brilliantly by the South East Reserve Forces and Cadets Association, SURFCA, and I'd like to pay tribute to their outstanding work supporting the cadets and community of Bracknell. Their commitment to defence is truly inspirational. The cadets provide a range of unique opportunities for young people to gain qualifications for CV enhancement, skill acquisition and personal development. For many, membership in the cadets has been a lifeline, providing positive guidance in times of crisis. For others, it's simply a fun thing to do and an opportunity to try new experiences with friends. I will.
I'm grateful to the honourable member. I received some correspondence from John Macmillan from Sidmouth. He and his two brothers joined the Air Training Corps in the 1970s. Two of them went on to serve with the Royal Air Force, and John himself went on to be a commercial pilot with BA, despite no previous connection to aviation in the family whatsoever. Does he recognise the value of the cadets to social mobility and providing opportunities?
I absolutely agree with the honourable member. In fact, in 2021, the University of Northampton published an independent report into the cadet forces, led by Professor Simon Denny. And based on data gathered from over 5,500 cadets, the report highlighted the strong benefits of cadet membership, including improved career prospects and, as the honourable member says, social mobility. As stressed by the report, the positive impact of the cadets was particularly strong for those who suffered economic and other disadvantages. Cadets tend to have higher sense of self-esteem, heightened aspirations, heightened sense of social responsibility, and higher respect for authority than their peers. Participation in CCFs, as the Denny report states, is also associated with improved school attendance, preventing serial absenteeism and changing young people's life outcomes in the long run. It's also proven to boost communication, resilience, leadership and social skills, all skills that we know that businesses and employers are looking for in young people. This in turn makes the cadets a wonderful tool of social mobility, supporting children from different backgrounds with different needs, including those with special educational needs, to break down the barriers to opportunity. For cadets eligible for free school meals, the Denny report found that they had higher self-confidence than their non-cadet peers. And what's also crucial, cadet forces ensure that young people and the country as a whole are more familiar with the fantastic work of our armed forces. It's important to remember that the cadets are not a recruitment tool into the services, but it's certainly true that by expanding an understanding of what it means to serve in the armed forces, the cadets give more young people the opportunity to consider whether a forces career might be for them. We all know that we're facing a recruitment and retention crisis in the armed forces, with targets missed for every year out of the last 14. I cannot emphasise enough that cadets are not a recruitment tool, but when we are facing such a significant challenge, anything that can be done to raise awareness of what it means to serve must surely be part of the overall solution. And whatever path cadets take after they leave their troop, it is undoubtedly a good thing that they have come to understand more deeply the important role our armed forces play in keeping this nation safe. I know that 2 recent graduates of the Bracknell Army Cadets have gone on to become paramedics, for example, and that they are looking to come back as adult volunteers after they've completed their paramedic training. When recognising this incredibly positive impact of cadet forces on young people, it's also critical to acknowledge the adult volunteers who are ultimately the ones who make the whole thing run. These volunteers are instrumental in mentoring and instilling in the young cadets the values which then go on to shape their futures. Their contribution to the lives of these young people is truly invaluable. We simply couldn't run the cadets without these adult volunteers. Some of the volunteers I spoke with during my visits to local cadet forces had a military background themselves, but many had no prior experience with the armed forces and were simply interested in supporting young people or because of the impact the cadets had had on their own route to adulthood. There are over 26,000 adult volunteers working across the 5 cadet forces. To be an adult volunteer requires a huge amount of commitment. This commitment is too often overlooked. And as the Denny report found, adult volunteers each provide around 400 hours of volunteering per year. This comes to a total of 10.4 million hours a year for all volunteers. Many of the volunteers I spoke to spend their weekends running activities for the cadets or undertaking training so they can perform their roles better. Running regular sessions each week also takes up much time, and many struggle to juggle their commitment to the cadets with their jobs. This is all in the context of performing a highly complex role working with children with all the particular issues around safeguarding that they need to stay on top of. So can I ask the Minister, what more can be done to ensure the valuable role of adult volunteers in the cadets is recognised through awards, recognition and other policies? What more can be done to ensure that they are more easily able to balance their work and other commitments with their dedication to the cadets? As I say, without adult volunteers, cadet forces can't run, and too often in these challenging times and with the rising cost of living, the volunteers are forced to deprioritise their commitment to volunteering because they're being pulled in too many directions. In CCFs, school staff are already under significant pressure in their day jobs. Given this, what can be done to ensure we have sufficient numbers of volunteers to support our valuable cadet forces? The funding of the 5 cadet forces is complex, and each is set up independent of the others. But it's projected that the Ministry of Defence spends around £180 million on the cadet forces annually. The Denny report notes that while there is no single figure that can be said to identify the return on this investment, where calculations of financial return can be carried out based on models produced by the government, their sum is vastly more than the annual cost of the cadet forces. The report concludes, spending circa £180 million a year on the cadet forces is an excellent use of taxpayers' money. With this in mind, can I ask the Minister to set out more clearly how the 5 cadet forces are funded and to what extent this funding has kept pace with inflation over time? The Department for Education recently ended a £1 million scheme aimed at supporting school staff instructors in state schools. What has that funding cut meant for CCFs on the ground? And could the Minister set out in the larger context of funding pressures that have been affecting each of the combined forces over the last decade? What continued support is there for CCFs? Under the previous government, there was much emphasis placed on expanding access to school-based CCFs. And can I ask the Minister whether similar schemes have been looked at to support the other cadet forces to drive an increase in numbers serving in the Army, Air, Sea and volunteer cadets, as well as, of course, into CCFs? And as I have already stressed, while the cadets are not a recruitment tool into the armed forces, they are an incredibly important tool for expanding social understanding of the military. Has the Minister looked at the role of the cadet forces in raising awareness of the value of our armed forces and the indirect impact they have on addressing the retention and recruitment crisis? I ask all of this in the context of the review I know that he is conducting into the cadets. Could he please set out more about what this review is looking at and how it will tie into the Strategic Defence Review? Madam Chair, my honourable friend the Minister is a proud champion for the wider armed forces community, including the cadets, and so I'm very much looking forward to hearing him speak on this very important topic.
The question is that this House has considered the role of cadet forces. Minister Alistair Cairns.
Thank you, Chair, and it's an honour to serve under your chairship today. I very much welcome this debate, and I'd like to thank the member for Bracknell for securing it, but also for inviting me to his local constituency and meeting his cadet force. I think the questions that I was asked by the cadet force would definitely equal that in difficulty to answer that we get from the opposition. It was indeed inspiring to see such young people who were full of life and energy and holding me to account when I went down to visit. I thought it was absolutely superb. And to the honourable friend from Slough, I think there's just a couple of statistics that are really useful to outline the benefits, the social benefits of cadets to the UK and to the youth of the nation. I think if every year the cadet experience helps just 1% of cadets change their life outcomes so that they're in employment, education or training, the annual costs of the cadet forces would be covered. I mean, that's a fantastic statistic to show that it's a spend-to-save model. In terms of health and well-being alone, participation in the cadet forces produces an annual return on average, that the lowest view, 90 million, up to 120 million return each year. And each year it's estimated the lifetime value of vocational qualifications gained by the most disadvantaged cadets is well over 130 million. I mean, when you start racking and stacking those costs, the benefits of cadets far outweigh some of the effort and energy to get it moving in the first place. And then finally, adult volunteers, who the cadets so heavily rely upon, benefit from being in the cadet force and can gain qualifications that can generate a total increase in potential lifetime earnings of around £50 million. And so I think when you pull all of that together, the impact and benefits of cadets are definitely not lost on me or indeed on the government. As one of the largest voluntary uniformed youth organisations of roughly circa about 130,000 people across the country, the cadet forces have two particular compelling benefits. First, and most importantly, they transform young people's sense of purpose. I agree that they boost their life chances. And second, cadets play a vital role in connecting defence to society when perhaps it's broader and there's more distance between the two than there ever has been in the past. And that's absolutely crucial at a time of rising threats to Britain's security, and as my honourable friend mentioned, really understanding what service means. Let's consider the first of those 2 points. Independent research has shown cadets benefit in multiple ways from membership. Not only do they find it engaging, challenging and fun, but taking part in activities and gaining new experiences can also be life-changing. I recently went to see the Sea Cadets in my own constituency with the professor from the university, and we talked through some of the benefits really to get into the weeds of it. I was not only encouraged by the individuals and the children I saw going through that process, but the amazing instructors. And when you combine the two, I think you get the magic happens, which is the fundamental principle of the cadets. Taking part in the activities and gaining new experiences can also be life-changing for many of them. For example, they improve their mental and physical well-being, of where we know there's an increase in need across society. Cadets develop the self-confidence to achieve things they would otherwise never have attempted or had the opportunity to do so. And perhaps even more valuably, if they don't achieve their objectives immediately, they develop the resilience to keep on going despite that. And in the process, they might discover individual talents and attributes which may otherwise remain dormant. For some, particularly those who may have struggled at school, participating in the cadet forces improves their educational chances of success. School attendance and behaviour tends to improve among cadets, and they are far less likely to be excluded from school. And those who come from economically disadvantaged families are among the greatest beneficiaries. Let's not forget those who step forward as the adult volunteers, as my honourable friend has mentioned. They're dedicated people who are have the inspiration behind the cadet force's success. These volunteers too gain from the experience and learn new skills which can benefit their careers. Now, as I said, cadets also play a vital role in connecting defence with society. Membership of the cadets is significantly more diverse and geographically spread out than our armed forces. Young people become more aware of career options at an early age, and because cadets are more likely to have a wider spread of skills tested, they're better positioned to choose their future direction as they move forward. The cadet experience plays an important part in boosting awareness of the armed forces in both communities and schools, and this often encourages individuals to pursue a career in the military, although I will reinstate that it's definitely not a recruitment tool. It's broadening their experience, opportunities and options. Over a third of service personnel have spent their time in cadets, interestingly enough, and they are more likely to go on to lead and serve longer than other recruits. A large proportion of the regimental sergeant majors in the Army were cadets or came through Harrogate. Cadets give young people and adult volunteers a sense of service, a feeling of belonging and pride in our country and its national institutions, which is really, really important. The cadet movement, of course.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine. The Minister, I think, like all of us in here, is a great advocate for the cadet forces. So I just wanted to ask him, on that basis, will he continue to make sure that they receive the funding that they need to keep these units alive and kicking, basically, and up and running?
I'd like to thank the honourable member for that comment. So I'm absolutely committed to ensuring that the funding for cadets continues, but also that funding is broadened out, not just from certain schools, but to state schools and the more disadvantaged across society. Interestingly, I went to a state school, always wanted to join the cadets. There was no cadet force available for me to join. So I think we've got to spread that opportunity as best as possible. Interestingly, for COVID and a variety of reasons, cadet funding has gone down from 2019 to 2024. It's stabilised now, and we are doing a review into the cadets, and that will be wrapped into the Strategic Defence Review when it comes out. So there'll be more to follow in that case. I think it's probably a good segue into maybe having a look at some of the challenges. And establishing and running a cadet unit, either in a community or in a school setting, as mentioned by the honourable friend, is not always easy. There are issues with funding and human resources. With cadet numbers growing, attracting and retaining enough capable and motivated individuals to deliver the cadet experience is an ongoing challenge. And we continue to work to encourage adults to join the cadets. We've recently made it an essential criteria for those companies who wish to achieve the gold standard of employer recognition schemes to show support to cadets and cadet force volunteers. Similarly, through the Cadet Vocational College, there are a range of opportunities for the adult volunteers to gain national accredited vocational qualifications. If I may, I'd like to come on to some of the questions that were posed by my honourable friend. I think the role of adult volunteers and the other commitments that they have, which piles a lot of pressure on some of those adult volunteers, is offset in some cases by the qualifications and the benefits they can get. But there is much more work we need to do to attract more people into the system. I was really interested and proud to see many of those volunteers receive MBEs in the last honours. And all the uniformed adult volunteers are eligible for the award of the Cadet Forces Medal after 12 years of service. And I saw many people wearing it with pride when I went to see the Sea Cadets in my constituency. I think when we look at sufficient numbers of volunteers, I'd like to see a process of we make it more attractive to be a volunteer. How can we ease that burden? How can we help them balance out their personal and professional life and, of course, the volunteer service? So we'll work on that in the future. And that is coming out in the review. It's something that came out really strongly from both the Army Cadets, the RAF and indeed into the Navy. That how do we make it more attractive and how do we get more veterans, for example, to support with the cadet services? And I think when we do look at the funding of cadet forces, I mentioned it before, broadening it out, not just from private schools to public in the more disadvantaged areas, and actually making it slightly more targeted to ensure better social mobility, and importantly, looking at more innovative ways to support the funding and linkages to local units and support organisations that are close by. And then finally, to answer your mention about the cuts to CCF as a whole, I sort of reflect to the overall spending. Spending has stabilised. It's actually gone down over 11 million since 2019. We are looking at ways which will wrap into the SDR to ensure that there are more cadets and more opportunities for those people that take place, but that will come out in the Strategic Defence Review in due course. If you're content, I'll move on to my closing remarks. This government is absolutely convinced, and I am convinced from what I've seen visiting cadets all over the country now with various members from either side of the House, that the benefit of cadets is absolutely non-debatable. It's not just for the young people to participate, but it's for society and the volunteers as a whole. The benefits and the statistics show that it is a spend-to-save programme. The cadet forces represent excellent value for money. The research has found that defence expenditure on the cadet forces result in a significant return on investment. Some of that is not just monetary. It's a broader societal benefit, which is sometimes difficult to gauge, but the analysis would suggest it's absolutely unequivocal in the benefits for society, defence, the young people and the adult volunteers as a whole. So while maintaining our current ambition to increase the number of cadets in schools, we're also looking to significantly grow the number of community cadets and broaden it out. And in this way, we can support youngsters throughout the UK whose lives are enriched by choosing to join the cadets. And at a time... Yes?
Richard Ford.
I'm grateful to the Minister. In November of last year, the Department for Education announced that it would be ending its £1.1 million grant for the expansion of cadet forces. I wonder whether there's any thought within the Ministry of Defence to backfill or make good on that £1.1 million that the DfE is intending to cut.
So I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for that question. I've been in discussion with DfE on multiple different occasions to look at how, when the SDR comes out, we can ensure that the opportunity across all schools, or as many schools as possible, is there for cadet forces. So it's definitely at the forefront of my mind, and it's included in the broader wrap of defence spending in due course that will be pushed out after the Strategic Defence Review. I think to summarise, we can support youngsters throughout the UK whose lives are enriched by choosing to join the cadets and providing as many opportunities as possible. It's a spend-to-save model, and at a time of societal and geopolitical uncertainty, does our part to build community coherence and reconnect Britain with its armed forces. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the role of cadet forces. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order.